Every day, approximately 280,000 employees in the Department of Homeland Security work diligently to carry out the mission and functions of the Department. And they very often do this job without thanks and public acknowledgement of their efforts to keep our country safe from harm. Just on a personal level, I can tell you, when I go through checkpoints, and we have a couple in my district, interior checkpoints, I always make a point after I've been cleared of saying to the agents, "Thank you for your service." And they look at me like, "Who are you? What's going on?" I never identify myself as a member, but I just want to thank them. And the look on their face tells me that very few people ever do that. We need to do better. These men and women are putting their lives on the line every single day for our country. But I believe it's also the role of the Department's Office of Public Affairs to communicate effectively with the public the programs and policies of the Department, and to provide the public with necessary Homeland Security information in a timely and open manner. It has been at times disappointing to see that the dissemination of this information to the public has not always been handled in an effective manner. The Department has struggled sometimes to communicate to the public not only when things have gone wrong, but also when things have gone right. Just recently, for example, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection seized nearly $1 million in methamphetamine and heroin when a Mexican man and a Tucson woman were arrested as they attempted to smuggle those drugs into the country. And just this past week, in southern Arizona, CBP officers arrested 2 people as they attempted to smuggle more than $1.67 million in currency going south into Mexico. Now, these are examples, actually, of successes. And I'm pleased to say that both of them were covered locally, and the credit was given where credit was due. We need more of this kind of public information, and we need more of these success stories being told, because there are a lot of them. But the Department also needs to be transparent with the public they serve, and that means communicating effectively at all times. Unfortunately, the Department has struggled to address its shortfalls in this area. For example, conflicting information about the impact of sequestration and the handling, as the Chairman pointed out, of the release of detainees are 2 examples of the Department's failing to get ahead of the story in an effort to avoid public fallout. In the case of the released detainees, it's particularly troublesome. ICE first reported that only a few hundred detainees had been released. ICE later admitted that more than 2,000 detainees were released, but did not provide details about the released detainees. In fact, members of Congress did not find out until it was in the newspapers that these detainees had been released. And then DHS waited months before actually disclosing that 622 detainees had criminal records, and 32 of those had multiple felony convictions. Not only does ICE's action and a lack of transparency create confusion among the public, but it also puts citizens at risk. And I might add, the sheriff in the adjoining county to my district, where many of these detainees were released, did not know that they'd been released until he too read it in the newspaper. Unfortunately, there are times when the Department seems to put image before information flow. According to an article published earlier this year in the Arizona Daily Star, the main paper in Tucson, Arizona, CBP public affairs officers in southern Arizona and along the southwest border were told to deny requests for information, ride-alongs, and visits to the border. CBP officials were told by their branch chief that if anyone on the local, regional, national, or international level made such a request, they must inform the reporter that you will see what you can do and get back to them and then send it to me. When the same reporter asked CBP for their use of force policy, he was flat out denied an ability to obtain a copy. And this caused, I think, great harm to the image of the Department, even as it was trying, I suppose, to protect it. Subsequently, when this newspaper article was published, the information officer reversed the policy and said that we would certainly be able, they would be able to accommodate local media requests. This kind of confusing back and forth, I think, does not help DHS in its mission. This type of information management is problematic, especially considering DHS may have more daily contact with the American public than any other agency. Approximately 50,000 transportation security officers, TSA officers, screen 1.8 million passengers every day at more than 450 airports across the country. And on a typical day, over 960,000 passengers and pedestrians interact with Customs and Border Patrol personnel by air, land, and sea. And furthermore, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, assists thousands of individuals affected by natural disasters and other hazardous situations. And let me just comment here that when FEMA goes to work, I believe it manages public information very well. It seems to me that whatever is going on in FEMA makes sense. What's going on perhaps in CBP does not. We need to make sure that we replicate the approach that FEMA takes with the CBP officers and agents on the ground. Given the broad scope of the Department's interaction with the public, it is imperative that it communicates effectively with the American public, not only about what the Department has done, but what it plans to do. One way the Department could improve its public image or interactions is, where applicable, hold open meetings with public about new policies and programs before they are implemented. And I believe input directly from constituents and communities affected by policy is critical. And that's why I introduced an amendment to H.R. 1417, the Border Security Results Act of 2013, which was passed ultimately unanimously by the full committee, which directs the CBP to conduct public meetings with border community members, to get their input into how we can best secure our borders. The people who live on the border or near the border or work on the border or near the border have eyes and ears unlike anyone else. They can be very helpful. We need to include them in any kind of policy development going forward. Having such meetings have proved to be very beneficial in my district. Through such meetings, the Department personnel speak directly and hear directly from individuals who live and work along the border. This dialogue not only aids in informing policy, it also improves Department's communication with the public. My predecessor, Congresswoman Giffords, urged the Border Patrol, when she was in office, to establish stakeholder meetings in our district. We now have 5 functioning stakeholder groups. They meet every month. Interactions between them, the citizens, and the Border Patrol is constant, and it has definitely improved communications in my district. I urge other sectors in the Border Patrol to do the same. And lastly, I would like to address an issue that I have addressed here before, and that is the unfortunate low morale in the Department. Low morale affects every aspect of an organization, and DHS consistently, unfortunately, ranks at the bottom when it comes to employee morale. In a 2012 study, DHS was ranked 19th out of 19 large agencies in the Federal Government when it came to employee satisfaction. Low morale causes a number of problems, including a high rate of turnover, which leads to complications in both internal and public communications. I urge the Secretary and the Department to take a very close look at the cause of low morale, or the causes of low morale, and high turnover in the agency, and to institute the appropriate reforms and leadership development to stem this tide. I look forward to hearing specific steps the Department will take to improve the way it communicates information and policy to the general public, and I thank the witnesses for their participation. I yield back the balance of my time.